Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am recording this session and I will post it on our archives page and send out an email after we're done today. I just have a few housekeeping things to remind you of for upcoming events with CKLS, and then we will get started with Jennifer McCulley here. Don't forget that next week on the 28th, which is a Thursday, we will be having a bylaws amendments overview, talking about the amendments we are proposing for the bylaws. And that will be on our September 20th full system board meeting. We have moved the date. It used to be September 7th, but it is now September 20th. That is the day we will have our revenue neutral rate hearing, our budget hearing, and then our full system board meeting to vote on our budget. So I hope you can make it. If we don't get our budget passed, we don't get money, and that means you don't get money. So it's kind of important. But anyway, on the 28th is the bylaws amendments overview. So we will go over those amendments, and there'll be a chance for you to ask your questions and make your comments. And then on August 2nd is our final trustee training of the year. We will be going over HR and management and personnel policies. And I won't be there for that one. I will be traveling, but Gail and Patty will be able to guide you through all that fun stuff. And that is all I have for right now. I'm sure there's more coming up, but just keep looking at your CKLS email lists and keep informed on those events. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer McCulley. She is joining us from the McPherson Public Library. You may recognize her. She used to be at the Great Bend Public Library as the teen librarian, I guess was her title there, but now she's over at McPherson. Take it away, Jennifer.
All right, thank you. All right, let me pull up my screen and make sure it's being shared. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. And I assume because you answered that question, you can hear me. So we're good to go. All right. Yes, I am Jennifer McCulley. I'm the Youth Services Coordinator for the McPherson Public Library. Been here for about 7 years. So before that, I was at Great Bend as young adult and marketing librarian. And before that, at Potawatomi-Wabaunsee Regional Library System. So this is my third library in the state. So clearly I'm a lifer. And I'm really excited to talk to you today as part of Plix and facilitating creative learning. So before we dive into exactly what this is, I'm just going to ask a question. What is your favorite food? So you can either unmute and share it out loud or put it in chat. So what do you enjoy eating or what do you enjoy making? So kind of like a twofer question. Seafood. Cookies, really good hamburger, fruit, almost any dessert. Italian food. I like the almost any dessert because I'm with you there. Italian food, ice cream, rice and beans and tres leche. That's an interesting combination there. I don't know if there's two people that's two separate answers, or if you just like them as a big old combo. I like
just mix them all up together,
right? That's what I'm picturing. Whatever, I don't have to cook or clean up afterwards. Yep. Okay. Pizza, watermelon, Greek food. Okay. Okay. Keep these in mind for later on. Okay. All right. So we are going to dive in. Okay, Plix, what on earth is it? Plix stands for Public Library Innovation Exchange. The goal of Plix is to develop STEAM learning experiences with MIT Media Lab researchers, and it's specifically designed for the public library setting. So basically it pairs library professionals with researchers at MIT to co-design STEAM activities. It started in 2017. As of just a couple of months ago, they are now partnering with Lego to expand into that as well. And so they have a whole new set of really awesome things partnering with them. So A lot to get excited about. And we'll dive a little bit more into what this means for you as library staff and how it can make our lives just a little bit easier, particularly with regards to planning events. So I always like when things are planned for me. That's the dream. Okay, a little bit of a disclaimer. As for me, I'm one of the first creative learning ambassadors for Plix. I was one of 25 librarians from across the country that were chosen for the first ever cohort, which technically I think my time ended technically in May. I don't really know what's going on with the creative learning ambassadors right now. We're all still just chatting like normal. It basically means that I advocate for Plix and creative learning, and I just get to spread the message of how much fun it is and how useful it is for our libraries to use it. A little more into what Plix is. Plix programs, they support learners as designers rather than consumers of technology, creators rather than recipients of knowledge, scientists and artists rather than one or the other. So essentially, all of these elements are laying the foundation for the creative learning experience. And so I want to take a look at what exactly creative learning means in the context of Plex. And if you have questions in the meantime, feel free to drop them into chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it. And Mary Beth, feel free to interrupt me. Very much organic when it comes to presenting. So if it comes up and you think of it, just type it in there so you don't forget. So creative learning. The 4 Ps of creative learning are this. Generally in a creative learning experience, learners work on projects that they care about, that connect to their passions or their interests, and they do it with their peers in a collaborative and sharing process, and they do it in a playful way. So it means it's okay for them to experiment. They don't worry about whether they're getting things right or wrong when they're working together. They just let their imagination propel them through the project. So at the MIT Media Lab, they're developing new technologies and strategies for cultivating creative learning. So they kind of look at these 4 Ps as their guiding principles for their framework of all the activities that they create. This is one of the founders of MIT's Media Lab. And I love this quote from him. The role of the teacher is to create the conditions for invention rather than provide ready-made knowledge. Because if you look up synonyms for facilitate, you don't find words like teaching or educating or leading, because teaching and educating often imply like a one-way direction for learning to happen. So it's kind of like how we all probably traditionally learned in school. The teacher stood at the front and she talked and the students faced her or him and listened, right? For us as facilitators, we're instead looking to be their guide on the side rather than their sage on the stage.
And Jennifer, there's a question in the chat. Does this have any foundations in Montessori teaching?
I don't think they ever outrightly say it, but you will definitely see an overlap of this for sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So rather than teaching, we as facilitators welcome, support, and guide diverse learners in designing, tinkering, and making. So we're just guiding them. So the question, what do we as facilitators need to know to be able to do this? And we need to know how to learn things. We don't need to know everything when we're going into these. We're kind of trying to unlearn how we were taught to learn in school, because we already know that we can learn as much from our patrons as we are capable of teaching them, right? Because we see that a lot when they come in and they need to share their knowledge with us, and they know so much more. One of my favorite elements of creative learning is actually this, and it's Mitchell Resnick's creative learning spiral. So he argues that the kindergarten approach to learning, which is this spiraling cycle of imagine, create, play, share, reflect, and then back to imagine, that's most ideally suited for our current learners, because it helps them develop those creative thinking skills that are critical to their future success and just their personal satisfaction and how they learn. So the strategy is to build on the success basically of traditional kindergarten style activities and extend them to all learners, regardless of their age. So the goal is to help everyone continue as creative thinkers. So we're going to take a deeper dive now into Plix's facilitation tips. And these are kind of how we try to guide us as facilitators with how we approach our, I don't know, what I want to say instruction, how we approach our programs that we offer. I don't want to go too heavy into a lot of these because I'm going to link, there's going to be a link to the website that's going to break all of these down, because a lot of times when you're using them, you're going to choose to focus on maybe a couple of them at a time and become really good at those aspects. Sorry, I was seeing a chat. I just read that Resnick thinks all grades should look like kindergarten used to, building blocks and Play-Doh instead of math worksheets. Wouldn't that be the dream, Gail? Just to be able to dig your hands in, because I think especially for those that are more tactile learners, being able to get your hands on stuff is such a better approach for a good portion of people. I think probably the majority learn a little better with that. Hated math work. Quilting for the quadratic equation. Liz, you are going to love one of these activities that I will show you, because you keep that quilting in mind. All right, so the first tip for facilitating creative learning is encouraging peer learning. We ask patrons to team up to help one another. It fosters that culture of support and alleviates some of the pressure on us as facilitators, because it opens up all those opportunities for collaboration. And we all know too that teaching someone else is a great way to deepen one's own learning of stuff. And I love this in particular with teens, when they're able to learn something and successfully show someone else how to do it, it just lights them up. And I love that. So I do want to talk just a little bit more about this, because I feel like this is something you might already all be doing. So what kind of peer learning have you seen that's worked for either yourself or for others? Have you seen this kind of peer learning in action as you have led programs, or even in your own learning that you've done? What have you seen? When have you seen any of that deep learning happen in a peer-to-peer way that inspires you to do that in your own facilitations? Because I imagine you probably get some peer-to-peerness maybe at some of your CKLS programs. We used to. Left-handed from YouTube. Distance, but still peer-to-peer. Yeah, I like that.
Amy from Otis says all our children's programs are open to all ages, and it's amazing to see all the kids, no matter what ages, working together and helping each other.
That is exactly what I mean. Yes, because it's good that they can work together. It's also a good way. I love that when you can get those kind of cross-generational programs. I love that with gaming events, when I inexplicably have one solitary senior citizen show up who's very passionate about teaching people a card game. And I once was at one where it was just this little old lady with 3 teenagers teaching them how to play a card game that none of them had ever heard of. And they had the best time. They all had paper down and were writing all of the instructions. And it was such a good moment for all of them. Oh.
And we have, I go to Tinkergarten with my 2-year-old, and it's so fun to learn alongside parents as we learn how to talk and encourage our children, all while we and the children play. And that's Shelby from Concordia, and she is one of our newbies.
Okay, I like that example, because it is you learning from other parents. Because I know too, like me, when I was, had my little one, I relied a lot on learning from other parents, and that was one of the best ways to learn. Okay, I'll move to the next one. If you have more, keep typing them in. Another facilitation tip is to frame activities to encourage creative possibilities. The best activity prompts leave room for and inspire patrons to bring in their own passions and their own playfulness. So inviting them with ideas that with open framing encourages their creativity, but not so open that they don't know where to start. So a theme like Enchanted Garden works really well because it doesn't define a specific end product. Like if you said make a frog, you're going to get a dozen frogs. But if you give them a broad thing like Enchanted Garden, you might get one frog, you might get a flower, you might get a tree that sings. You know, you're going to give them just a little more wiggle room in which to play. And I like that concept just in general, because I feel like that really works if you're doing crafts with preschoolers, to give them a little more flexibility with what they can think of, because we all know their imaginations are just going to run completely wild with whatever you give them anyway. The next facilitation tip is to feature a variety of approaches with example projects that provide a range of jumping off points, to keep them readily available so they're ready to inspire people to tinker with their own ideas. So the best examples, both the ones that are thoughtfully incomplete and not too complex, can help with troubleshooting and questions if somebody gets stuck in a program. So if someone does happen to reach that point where they're stuck, you can refer them to an example or to a project of one of their peers to cycle it back to that peer-to-peer learning. And one of the best tips that kind of ties in with this is to avoid using step-by-step instructions. If you must use directions, highlight points where they can make the project uniquely theirs. The problem with step-by-step instructions is they will follow it step by step and they won't deviate. I do this even when we're making creative art projects for teens. I will do part of it and then I will stop. And that will be one of my examples. So they know that anything after that point can go any direction that they want. It's just a jumping off point. But I do, when we do this, when we do one of these programs, I typically have a good half a dozen different examples that run the entire spectrum, just so they can kind of see that they have that freedom to explore. Because a lot of times when they're learning stuff in school, they have to, you know, follow those step by step, and everybody's supposed to end up the same. And so when they come to the library, I want them to know that we're going to celebrate how unique they are. Okay. Oh, next up, celebrate the process, not just the finished product. You want to reflect on how things are going via check-ins and also share outs with the patrons to let them share with everybody kind of where they're at in their steps. And when checking in with them, that might be when you find where they're stuck. The best thing is to ask them clarifying questions about what their process is and what ideas they have, and give suggestions rather than directions. I've done this a lot even when my kids are here with building club, when they're building with Legos and they think they're finished and they've built this beautiful house. And then I always try to ask them, where's your bathroom? And that's usually when they start thinking about everything else that they forgot to build. And so it's just those little mini check-ins that get them thinking in a different direction. Because we're like, even Lego people got to use the bathroom, right? I don't know. All right, when a patron asks for help, let them maintain control of their project, materials, and tools. So instead of grabbing the tools yourself to show them how it's done, ask questions or suggest next steps for them to implement themselves. If you do need to get your hands on their project to explain something, make sure that they have the opportunity to try that step again on their own, because that's going to reinforce their learning. I know we see that a lot, I think, with parents, probably if you're working with preschoolers, where they're trying to finish the project for them because they're putting the eyes in the wrong place. That's not where they go on the fish. But in our case, you want them to put their eyes wherever they want and just let them going. Teaching crochet or knitting, yes. If you have to show them, they still have that opportunity to keep going. Like, that's a good example. Use friendly language. Welcome your patrons with easy, approachable word choices. Essential technical terms can be introduced gently in a familiar context if you need to. And I would suggest to having relevant books and other resources available for anybody who wants to take a deeper dive into a subject. But for most of them, they're not going to want to necessarily know that this particular activity explores the field of pneumatics and everything that goes along with it. They just know they're there to have fun. And so it's a good way to introduce them to a concept without needing to beat them over the head with it. Because again, our goal is not to be school 2.0. And the biggest one really is to remember that facilitation is a practice. Becoming a creative learning facilitator in this manner is a continuous process of trying, reflecting, and iterating. Don't stress about being good at it right away. Try to spend at least 10 minutes for self-reflection anytime you do a workshop in this style, because it can be really messy. I've presented on this probably, I think this might be my 4th presentation on Plix for the regional library systems. Maybe 5th. Is it my 5th? I think it might be, yeah, it's number 5, you're number 5. But I reflect on this every time. So I tweak it after every single presentation to figure out what I can change. Because no matter where you're at on your journey as a creative learning facilitator, it's still just begun. So regardless of that level of experience, most facilitators you'll meet would say they're still learning how to be better facilitators. It is that journey. And for those who've tried facilitating creative learning in your libraries, please share some of those first experiences with others, because I think that's the best way to help one another grow, is that we learn best from each other, the peer-to-peer learning.
And Amy says every audience is different, so that also changes your facilitation.
Yes, and even each individual within that audience. The website we're going to explore that goes a little deeper into a lot of this gives you some of those suggestions as far as when you have that patron who's this, what's your best next step? And it's kind of nice to have those goalposts to kind of keep learning, because there are always going to be that surprise one that you did not see coming. So that just makes it fun. Okay, so I'm going to stop this screen share and we are going to head to the website for Plix and take a little tour, because it is one of the best ways to really show you what this looks like in your context. So let me reshare my screen. Okay, so this is the website, which is on the end slide, but I'm going to drop it into chat too, so that way there's a nice little record of it on here. And this is the Public Library Innovation Exchange. Whenever you're on here, this is what this beautiful thing is going to look like. And I'm going to start first up here with the Plix Workshops, because it's honestly where I got my first start. They do things on here called make and meets. So if there's an activity that you're interested in learning more about, you can do a make and meet with other libraries, often from around the world. I've been in many of these where I think one of them we were in breakout sessions and every single other person that was in mine was all in the UK. And so you get a much different global perspective on what other libraries are doing, which is utterly fascinating. I learned a lot about their summer library programs in different stars. So it will tell you everything about it. You click on it, it'll give you the details. Actually, this beautiful symmetry, Liz, was what I was thinking about when you were mentioning quilting. So I'll hop over to that activity. I'll make sure to show you what that is. So this is sort of the overview. You just register, it's free, and you hop on and you participate. They'll often send you a list if there's stuff that you should have, but a lot of times it's just kind of what you already have. Quickly, the online community is very much active. It is a fantastic resource where you can share all of your activities. You can ask other librarians questions who are participating in it. They share a lot of different options on here, and it's been very helpful. And there's a self-guided mini course that you can do if you just want to learn how to do any of these steps a little more thoroughly. But the absolute best thing about Plix is this first one, the STEAM activities, because all of these activity guides here are ready-made. So we'll start with beautiful symmetry, since that very much reminds me of quilting, and that's what a lot of libraries have done. All of these are formatted in the same way. So they're going to give you your lovely overview. It's going to give you the link directly to the forum where they're talking specifically about this activity. So it's nice they're all grouped together. It's going to give you an overview. Explore a branch of mathematics that's profound yet accessible to creative learners. Beautiful Symmetry adopts symmetry as a foundation around which to explore works of art and functional materials in physical and digital formats. So I always love those overviews. It gives you an idea. At a glance, it's going to tell you your age range, so all ages for this, your group size, that's definitely adjustable, the number of facilitators you need, how long they think if you're doing a structured workshop, it should roughly take, and the relative cost per participant. But on this one, you'll see, note, this activity uses many craft or recycled materials that many librarians might already have on hand. So it's possible this is going to be a low to no cost activity, depending on how you do it. It also, on all of these, gives you a suggested supply kit, which is absolutely delightful. These ones that are kind of underlined will usually link to something else. And this right here is one of those things, and that is the beautiful Symmetry Zine. All of these have a zine attached. I'm gonna switch my screen share. Or is it still sharing? Okay,
yeah, we can see the
perfect.
PDF.
Oh,
yes.
I was making sure it opened in the right place. So all of these are ready to go. Each activity has a zine, so you would print it and then try to remember how to cut and fold a zine properly. And there's instructions on all of them to remind you how to do that, because I have to relearn that every single time I do that. You would think I would remember, but I do not. And so they're already ready to go. So you would essentially have these ready as handouts to be able to give to your patrons when they're there to participate. And it just kind of gives that general overview of what the program is about and a little more detail. Oh, but yeah, here's a resource that shows you how to cut and fold them after printing. Thank you. Each of these gives you workshop prompts. So because all of these activities can be done in different ways. So with this one, maybe you're doing everybody's designing a textile, gift wrap, or a wallpaper pattern using customized stamps. Maybe they're making patterns with algorithms in a spreadsheet or on paper. Doesn't that sound like a hoot? Explore the built-in and natural worlds to capture imagery of the way symmetry provides form and function. Build a sculpture or tapestry using symmetrical elements found in the environment. Kids have had a lot of fun with that one. I've seen pictures from other libraries. And there's always a pretty good thing of different examples, because all of this was beta tested with MIT Media Lab researchers and public librarians. There's always some different examples that they'll give you. And you can find even more on the forum. So that way you can kind of understand, like, this is patterns created using a hand carving potato stamp. This is in spreadsheets. This is the natural world and finding that symmetry there. And then this is using the Scratch program. And it's going to give you ideas as far as reminding you to make example projects and the facilitation tips that might work best for this. Think globally, inspire locally. Hands-on examples, hands-on, that reflect the cultural diversity of your community. They appear in a wide range of textiles, ceramics, wall patterns, tapestries from every continent and islands around the world. That could be a very interesting one to do for next summer's kindness theme, if you're kind of going with a more global approach of bringing in other cultures together to have as a framework. To know the depth. While the concept of symmetry and pattern is something learners often encounter in preschool, the domain has a very high ceiling in mathematics research. You won't want to dive into technical jargon, but it may be helpful to point out to participants areas where the field of symmetry is relevant: facial recognition, meshes, 3D model, algorithmic art. So it's kind of nice that it gives you all these different directions to take these. And then it's going to give you a little bit more about who, which researchers, and if there was a librarians that were preeminent, I guess, on doing this. And the really good thing is the others. They often have playlists that you can access on Spotify if you want ready-made background music for your program, which is just very much an asset. One of the ones I really love is inflatables. And I always like to show this one, and I'm going to also give it a little plug. We are going to be having the public library section. We're going to be sponsoring 2 different make and meets with Plix inspired activities at KLA this year. And one of them is doing paper inflatables, which we'll see that on here is actually what we call a remix, because this one requires these lovely mini irons and these Mylar bags to make these inflatables. And we, as librarians, wanted something that was like a no heat option for younger kids, because we didn't want to be giving them stuff that could potentially have any fumes. And so paper inflatables were developed. All of the format you can see is the same. This one, in addition to the zine, also has pattern cards. And so it's going to look kind of the same, but it's going to give ideas for the different shapes that they can use to make these inflatable creatures and flowers and a little critter that crawls. And if we go down here, you'll see some of those in action. And I love this. I'm hoping we're actually going to be doing this tomorrow with my 4th and 5th graders that I have this week. We're going to be doing it with the paper version. And we're going to be doing that to have kind of undulating jellyfish, so they will kind of move. And I like it because it reuses materials when you're doing it this version. I love that there's a bionic arm that somebody made. I love the wearable one with the little headband and the little ghosty one, you know. And it's nice to see this diversity. So when I'm doing a program like this, some of these double as my examples, because I will put this up on the big screen. So that is up there to inspire them, because honestly, it's just quirky. And I feel like we need a little more quirky in our lives. And if we go down here, so it will talk about the heat-free alternative, which takes us to a remix that somebody has done, which is just paper, origami paper, masking tape, a straw, and a pair of scissors. And it shows you step by step how they did it. And I love this because it uses materials I already know I've got in my craft supplies. And that is the cutest little thing ever. I love his little antenna, the little drawn on eyes, and it amuses me. So yeah, please look out for that at KLA, because we're going to have some fun with that. And I love this because it's what we love about this activity. We're turning trash into treasure. There's multiple paths to success, endless possibilities. The sky's the limit. There's a lot to do within this. In here, the facilitation techniques are going to talk about keeping the language light. The physics and engineering concepts underlying this project are profound, but it's best to maintain an informal, friendly, lightweight tone for this introduction to pneumatics, because we could go in deep with this. And I love that it says relevant books to have on hand include origami, pop-up book crafts, balloon animal sculpting, 3-dimensional design, and even some hippie books about inflatable architecture. And it's like, for example, we love Inflato Book by Ant Farm. And so it gives you these practical things. And I'm like, I never would have thought about inflatable architecture. So it'll be fun. Yeah, I can see Patty and Diane making some lovely wearables with this. And the facilitation prompts on this one: toy factory, a cyborg, wearables, architecture. And so it gives you those directions if you want something focused, but still broad. Design your own bouncy castle. I think that would be inflatable architecture. And that would be just a hoot. If they were doing that on a small scale and having something that kind of moved, that would be hilarious.
Your Lego men to be the inside of the bouncy castle.
Oh my gosh, where you're just
even make them bounce
up and down. Oh my gosh, I've got to do that now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got to. The other one that we are going to be doing as our second make meet at KLA this year is going to be on paper circuits. because I wanted to make sure librarians have a chance to try this, to realize the simplicity of it. And I love it's like age range is 8 and up. I could do it with younger if it's a family program. If I know that I've got big people there to help them, then we're good to go. And it gives you all your supplies. It gives you your zine. It's also got some other options you can have as far as how to download it. It's got a troubleshooting tip worksheet too, that you can, another handout. I love that they're already made. Here is the examples of this. I love the cat. Horribly creepy, but it's awesome. I love that there is a wearable one. That's something I'm hoping to do with teens this fall, is to do some more of those wearable. A lot of libraries did this. They collected Christmas cards, the fronts of them, and they used those as the basis for artwork in December as a program, so they could add lights to trees or to whatever. We're doing one, which it's supposed to be this month, but I think will end up being next month, which is like historical photos of our original Carnegie Library building. And we're going to pop in some lights, and we're going to have the guides already on the back. And that way it's kind of a take and make for people to celebrate our town's 150th or something. I think that's what it is. I've lost track of all of the centennial sesquicentennial, I don't know. So anyway, these are just some of the lovely examples that are here. And I love that all of the formats are consistent. I love that handouts are ready for you. So you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. I love that even stuff as simple as the different examples and playlists and all of that, they're ready for you. The one we're going to explore a little bit together today in detail is space food. So that is going to be like our fun thing that we're going to do together to kind of talk and practice this a little bit, so you can take a little deeper dive into what an activity would be like. For us, I know we always have, we have Cosmosphere very close to us. So it's kind of nice if I can pair that with them coming to talk about stuff. It works as a nice holistic couple day program, or a longer thing if I want. So the thing about this is the age range is 8 to 13 years old. I have done this enough times with librarians, librarians from all over, and we think it's hilarious too. And adults make the weirdest examples that I don't even think a kid would do. So don't be limited, I think, by that, because I think even teens, if you're giving them the freedom to create something and think outside the box, I think that they could probably come up with some interesting options. So, and the cost is very relative. It says 5 to 7, but I've done this for next to nothing with supplies on hand. And I will show you some of my random examples, because I think I make a new one every time I do this. So I end up with a lot. So it gives you some different options of things that people have used in the past, everything from nylon screws and foil paper, which I don't know, foil paper versus aluminum foil, popsicle sticks, springs, droppers. So basically like opening up your recycle bin and your craft supplies and just start hoarding for a bit. The zine is just like the others in format. It's going to tell you all of those different things, the basics that they need to know. And the considerations for dining in space handout. So this is something you always have to discuss when you first start. I just saw the Make Thomas Kincaid cards light up. That would be perfect. They need some pizzazz, right? There's so much going on in them. Okay, so the considerations for dining in space, the things that you need to know about eating on the International Space Station. That microgravity affects the way fluids behave. So you can't pour or drink easily in space. So we know this. That it alters human physiology, so it dulls their sense of taste. That food cannot produce crumbs because they can go into the air filtration systems and damage the equipment. That standard kitchen equipment used to store and heat foods like ovens and freezers aren't due because of storage and power constraints. that it's too costly to ship cargo into space, so they have to have a very long shelf life, that weightlessness affects the ability to combine ingredients, so salting a meal is impossible, that there isn't enough room for storage, so the vacuum sealed, freeze dried, flat packed, that's what you have as standard because they're space saving. And that the process, I love this one because I didn't really think about it. Processes that require microbial activity like fermentation are impossible on the ISS because the microorganisms required aren't permitted there. And so those different things that really make you have to stop and think. So the workshop prompts, I asked you at the beginning kind of your favorite thing to eat. And so thinking about your favorite thing, how is it best to try to adapt that into a zero gravity environment? So it's thinking about how to adapt it or create a tool to help you make it. Here's some of the examples that are on theirs. This was a utensil set that they could wear around their neck. And there was like, I think, a blue light thing. So every time they put it in, it sanitized itself. Space chopsticks to grab your food as it's floating away, which is just quirky. I love the scent creator that produces earthly scents like the smell of grass, rain, and home-baked goods for astronauts. And I really love this one, a device that uses the cold temperatures of space to create pastry dough. So logically, none of these are probably feasible or going to work. But I like these as examples because it doesn't matter that they're not going to work. Kids are not going to care. They want that weird thing of finding something that they're particularly quirky and passionate about. So we're going to, here, I'll show you a couple more of mine. So do you guys remember push pops, like the frozen treats you had to like, okay, right? So I was making my own version with like a tool tube, and so you could like, you know, pop your like balls of food in your mouth, right? And so these are my ping pong balls. I use these for other things, but this also has inadvertently become the favorite toy of the kids that hang out in my office when they realize they could just do that, and just, which is why I have ping pong balls and pom-poms all over my office, and I find them on a regular basis because they think it's funny. I have made a smoker. It's like to smoke your food. So you put your scents in and you put your food in here, and then it would just smoke the flavor in there, right? Because they need something with a lot of flavor so they can taste it. I was using the tissue paper squares as examples. Do you know the Listerine strips that you stick on your tongue and they dissolve? And I was like, why can't we have that with other flavors? And that way you could just be like, here's your salts, and just like lick it and stick it on what you're eating. And then your food is salted and it's not flying away. So that was our weird thing. We were making I had some kids helping me with this one. We were making a random machine that you could like, and then we had this at one point threaded through. So it was like little candies that you could pop off, but even this was edible because it would be made of like fruit roll up. And then the box was made of gingerbread. So you could like, I wouldn't really eat this, it's cardboard. That's like really, so those are some of my random examples. And those are what I mean by random. And so when we're thinking about these kinds of things, think about what really off the wall examples can you create before you do this with kids, because they need stuff that's kind of practical, that makes sense. And they need the stuff that's so silly that they're like, an adult thought of that. So they know that it's okay to be silly, because we need to be silly too. So that's what I want for you for now. I want you to think about those favorite things or those favorite experiences that you have, because I think a lot of times we also associate other feelings with the process of preparing food that they're not also probably getting on the ISS. I did one of these with librarians where they wanted to make some kind of a way that they could also play games and stuff while they were doing it. And so it became more of an all around I don't know, social activity than it was just about the food process. So think about those favorite things that you say you like to eat or make, and how can you create? I don't remember who said ice cream, but yours is done. But can you make it better? Because freeze-dried ice cream is, it's not ice cream, right? So how can you take your food? So if you have materials around to make a weird prototype, go for it. If your thing is drawing it out and you want to sketch your stuff, do that too. And I like being able to do that because there are some kids that just want to draw what they want to create. They want some crayons, they want some paper, they want to make a blueprint, and that's good. If they want to start cutting into giant Easter eggs and Altoid tins and shoving things together, that's good too. And I like the idea that we can provide all of those different approaches to learning, because that's what makes it so creative, which is why I have the most random box of supplies that I keep in my office for when I'm presenting. I've got rolls and rolls of tubing. I've got tinsel that seems to have gotten stuck into it with static. I've got wire, and I've got, oh, I found space scrapbook paper. I don't know why, but I thought maybe it just needs something decorative. We need art. So that is your challenge. And if it helps, work on the peer-to-peer learning. If you're like, I really love Italian food, because I know somebody said Italian, and I don't know how to do spaghetti where it's not messy. So it's something to ponder. And the sky's the limit, because it doesn't have to be practical.
Okay, so I'll add for something I need help with is my favorite food was cookies. And one of the best things about chocolate chip cookies is the smell of them baking, right? Well, you can't bake in space and you can't have crumbs in space. So that really kind of says you can't have cookies in space, which is just, well, yeah, like how am I want to go to space and I want my cookies.
Couldn't you use a scratch and sniff?
Well, see, what I'm thinking is like a self-baking cookie that comes with its own feed bag. So then the crumbs are contained.
I love that you said feed bag, because that was literally what my assistant said downstairs. Because she said, I want donuts. And she goes, do just like a feed bag. You just put your donut in there. And she's like, there's no crumbs.
There's no crumbs.
I was like, oh, it's nice. I go, so we're horses now. So we've all been reduced to livestock. That could work. And I like the scratch and sniff. I've always loved that. One thing that my first time doing this was with a group of a bunch of librarians. And we all decided we wanted lickable wallpaper, like a la Willy Wonka, but that everybody would have their own designated wall. So you didn't have the cross-contamination of licking somebody else's wall. And we're like, that's how you get the flavor, right? You just lick the walls of the International Space Station.
But don't you think it would be way awesome if there were like 5 different layers?
Oh my gosh.
And it was in grid, so you could choose your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then when you were done, you could peel away the breakfast, whatever it was you wanted,
great.
that might work.
Yeah. I think they just need to build a second like ISS that's like a store so they can have their stuff there.
Yeah.
If space is a problem, add some more.
It's in space. There's all that space out there.
I know. I mean, come on. Chocolate chip cookie flavored jelly beans. Ooh.
It's the texture and the warmness though too. The gooey,
yes, the melted chocolate.
So you want to see what I came up with, or you want to wait?
Oh, I say share it when you got it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to I'm going to change views here, and I'll feature me for everybody. So hopefully I add spotlight. Here we go. All right. So here's my drawing. So here's my bag of cookies, and this is the person eating them. It hooks around their face, but it's like an insulated. It's like an insulated munch bag, but it uses those hand warmers that you put in your pocket in the winter that like has that chemical reaction and they heat up. So it uses hand warmer technology to heat up the cookies, so then they're nice and gooey, and then you put your face in it and eat it.
So we could use those. In the Army, they have meals ready to eat, and to cook it, you like snap it like a glow stick.
Yeah.
You just snap it, and then the cookies would heat up like that too. Because that would be cool.
I'm
hungry now.
You're welcome.
Okay, I got to show another thing just to help as we're thinking about it, because this is a
of course,
Interplanetary Cookbook. And they're actually accepting, like they have a constant roll call of people who want to share their stuff. And I really love it because I love this one, the space food helmet.
Oh, it was so right with the feed bag.
Because then you have all these little containers. And I was like, it's like you're in a fishbowl, but your stuff isn't going where. So I guess you have to put your hands in and feed
That is
yourself.
not good for a binger. They would eat it all and then they would be starving
But
the rest of
the
the
whole
time.
thing about it just warms my little heart.
Yes.
There was the Interplanetary Gastronomy, and you can kind of see some of the stuff as far as what that is like.
Looks like a specimen bag floating on the lap.
It does look a little suspicious, but it does. I love all of this where it gives you all the details. I love the space food helmet, like it's just, that the helmet is ridiculous, but they are genuinely working on this. NASA, I think last year or the year before, had just done like an open call. It was a competition to be able to submit for your ideas for space food for their project. They also have an interplanetary cookbook here that gives you just other things. There was the flavor fork, which was supposed to it was like loaded, I believe, and it's like a scroll wheel that intensifies the flavor as they're eating. And I love these kinds of things because they're just it's very unusual. And I was like, it never would have occurred to me to do this, but how unusual. And I love it because it's so very, very weird. I like weird.
I think for me, it's not food so much, but it's like a cup of something warm to hold.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what it
the tea
tastes like so much
thing.
Because I'm the same with a cup of soup or a cup of hot water even. But
there's something very comforting about it.
Yes, to me there is.
Yeah. I like that.
So it would have to be like a cup with a switch that you could put on, and then you put your drink bag in there and then you sip from it. But it's just the warm thing to hold. The drink doesn't have to be.
The drink doesn't matter. You're just like, you just want the warmth on your hand.
What fun. I don't know if you saw in the messages, Rami said, I have 5 girls in the library now watching over my shoulder, asking when I am doing this.
Hopefully this fall.
And I did put links to both of those interplanetary cookbooks in the chat for everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, those are one of those things that I kind of forget about. And then I'm doing this and I'm like, oh, right. The weird space helmet. I always think about it because I'm like, okay, I have to remember there's hand holes because I'm always like, do you just like
drive like bobbing for apples?
Right? Oh, there would be a good experience, I guess. Can you
go.
trick or treat on the ISS? Like maybe we need that. Nailed It Space Edition. I would watch that.
Does anybody else have a space food invention to share?
Or an idea?
Or an idea?
A concept. I've been pondering the Italian food thing myself for a while because I know you could easily do like ravioli where everything's inside and it's a single bite, right? And just pop it, but I really like noodles, right? And so I feel like I need something that's like one continuously long noodle that is somehow still got my sauce factor, and I don't know whether that is maybe where my weird tubing comes in, that if this was my spaghetti noodle, it's full of sauce. So I could just like slurp it and bite it, Then how do you get it from keep coming out? Like as you take a bite? I don't know. These are my problems. But this is where I need like kids.
I think you need like a Capri Sun type package that it's all filled with the sauce and then the noodle comes out through the straw.
Yeah. Do you have it in like two, or is the sauce in there? Do you have 2 separate ones?
2 straws.
Like, it's like a combo thing in your mouth. So there's a
For some reason I
here.
pictured the noodle coming out of my nose. That's then where my brain went.
It just seems like a terrible plan, but I think it would work. Yeah, I feel like feel like there's something there. I'm gonna have to make something wearable, maybe, so I can have one of these, like those tacky beer helmets, you know,
Oh, yeah.
where one side is this and you kind of like lock it into place, the other is this, so you can do combo foods. Is that what it is? Then you can work and eat.
Mix your own things together.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh, I'm so gonna do that. I'm gonna make one with using, because I have a ton of these eggs. So I'm gonna have to make a weird helmet.
There you go. Instead of a hose on one side, it just needs a long noodle.
Ooh, short noodles that are capped, but still filled with sauce. So you like pinch it in between. So it's like
Yeah.
a little tiny.
Or like pre-filled.
That might be better for portion control too. Like the honey sticks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honey sticks might not actually be a bad idea for that. But I feel
Miniature
like
cannoli.
we'd always talk too about how do you make edible packaging so you don't have waste. And so that's why, like, when I was making this box, I was like, maybe the box is made of gingerbread. Maybe it's made of like hard seaweed or something that you can still eat.
Rice paper.
Rice paper. What do you have something like, what would be kind of that tougher plastic container one that could
Twizzler.
hold something liquidy?
We're gonna do it with some sort of agar gel, I'm sure.
Right? There's got to be some option.
Ooh, Liz says banana plastic, but will it make everything taste like bananas? Or banana peel?
Unless that's what they're going for.
Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah, just
Line it with seaweed.
Yeah.
You've got them thinking, Jenny.
Yeah, I like it. It gives lots of, there's a lot of wiggle room here.
Yeah.
Yeah, when my assistant said she would do donuts, but I was like, well, you've got donut holes and those are single pop. She's like, she wants a traditional donut with the hole in the middle. She's like, I don't want to lose the experience of a donut. And I was like, and I get that. But I said, but then the problem is crumbs. How do you get away from the crumb factor? Because you can't just, I mean, you can pop a whole one in your mouth. You just shouldn't, right? So I'm
Challenge accepted.
Isn't that why they make those little mini white hole donuts and
I
chocolate
guess
donuts?
those would be the worst, because if you like powdered donuts, that would be a nightmare on the eye.
powdered sugar would be
crumbs
everywhere.
Yeah. So you probably can't have Cheetos in space either, right? Because it makes your fingers all
Oh,
orangey.
probably
They had a
not.
Simpsons like that, where Homer had a Cheeto and it got loose and it ruined everything when he went to space. Yeah.
Where the
But if you
portable
had your
black hole
feed bag
comes
to
in.
self-contain, but think, so if you had your feed helmet to self-contain,
Yeah,
those crumbs, there's no place to take it off and get the crumbs out of your neck. You know,
I guess you have to like smush it and suck all the crumbs up before you can remove it. And then
Maybe.
you're just stuck in there. It would have to be a see-through bag, that's for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the dilemma.
And these are actually real problems because they have to feed these people.
They do.
Oh, a mini vacuum in the helmet. There you go. Just
Yeah.
sucks up the crumbs.
And then you hope it doesn't malfunction.
Yes.
And then you're like, ah,
Bark. There goes that eyebrow.
here goes the air. That was my problem with Liz's mini black hole, portable black hole thing. That just seems like you're asking for it. I've seen enough Star Trek to know where that's headed, and it's never good. You could hear their input. Yeah, I would love to know the input of others, because, and I feel like this is more what patrons need to know that we do on a regular basis. I've got a class downstairs and I was like, I'm going up to talk to some people about how to learn in some space food. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, no, this is my job.
I'm laughing myself to death over the fish that cleans the fish tank.
Ooh, space fish. Oh, like the
Yeah.
fish in, what was the Chicken Little movie that just walks around and has the little portable aquarium head?
There we go.
Mm.
Get small enough and it will be fine. No, it won't, Liz.
Just let it go. Let it go.
Can only consume so, no, that's, I'm pretty sure not it. It can consume enough. It can consume the ISS, I'm sure.
Well, maybe it'll create a wormhole and then you get to travel someplace new. So
Yes.
there you go.
I
where
will
they have better
say,
food.
we'd also discussed this in terms of like for this summer, the deep sea divers, the ones that have to live in like the hypobaric environments, and the constraints they have on food that are very similar to what astronauts on the ISS have because of their environment. And there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of overlap and remix this, because there's, you know, that's such a weird profession, like that a lot of people do, like kids do not know that that is like a thing. And so it's interesting to see how that kind of is the same. I highly recommend looking into it, because I'm like, oh, I would hate that. That'd be so much worse than living in space. At least there you get a little bit of like zero gravity funness, but oh.
So would like marshmallows, if the pressure wasn't right, wouldn't they like expand or like compress?
Or shrink.
Yeah.
They'd be flat
Would they, yeah, become flat or, yeah.
or enormous, like Stay Puft Marshmallow.
That's a good question. There's an experiment I would love to.
I've seen people use a vacuum sealer and suck the air out of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've never seen the opposite.
So if you can vacuum pack them really small, then they would be good for space, because they wouldn't take up that much space.
That's true.
But a man cannot live on marshmallows alone.
I'm not sure.
I
about
can't.
that. Yeah, they have gelatin in them, so they're not
They do
vegetarians yet.
I did find some good vegan ones, so.
There you
Doubt.
No, they were. Keegan said they were like 9 out of 10.
Okay.
He
I have
was
to
like,
give them a go.
just
Now, have you made
different
s'mores with them yet?
I have not. We just got mini peppermint ones that we did over the holiday season for hot chocolate.
Oh, yeah, that's needed.
I was like, I hadn't, you know, that's not an experience I have of having hot chocolate with marshmallows in it. I haven't had that probably since I was 8.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to try it.
All right. The wormhole would be a not choose your own adventure, whereas space is mostly a choose your own adventure. Well, that's true, Amy. And then Raimi says, when you dehydrate marshmallows, they blow up. Well, Gail, we need to have an experiment. I want to blow up some marshmallows.
I feel
Use
like
the parking lot on a Sunday.
I feel like this is a good experiment for libraries.
I don't have a dehydrator.
I don't either. Oh, Ron
And
does.
I'm not gonna use the stove in the building either. So the oven, that won't work.
I like it.
If you can
This is
find one at a
lot.
thrift store, we can go for it.
Okay.
Very
Need it for
interesting. What a fun hour.
Anybody have
Thank
any
you,
other
Jenny.
food ones they needed to share? Was anybody else working on anything that they're like, this is it?
This is going to change space travel as well.
Right? Space dining is never going to be the same because I am a genius. Like that's the level of commitment I expect. And I feel like that's the level of commitment you get from kids, because they're absolutely certain that their brilliance would absolutely work. And I really want to make my own model of that ridiculous space helmet for when I do this with kids here. That way they can try it on.
Oh, I think that would be awesome. Yes, yes, you definitely need to do that. Black
Well,
holes.
Shelby, I think you just joined the right crowd. Yes.
Pretty much.
Black holes will clean everybody up. That's the joy of a black
Yeah.
hole.
It seems like the final solution rather than maybe the first one.
So
Thank you for a
on
fun hour, Jenny.
on Futurama,
Thank
they
you.
have that pet that eats everything, Nibbler, and then he creates antimatter. We just need a Nibbler on the ISS, and then we'd be fine because he'd eat all the crumbs.
So they need to increase their space travel and start finding some alien creatures that could be of some use.
It's really the only solution.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think
So
for
obvious.
sure.
Okay, we are at 2:30. So thank you, Jennifer, for your
Thank you.
for your time and sharing Plix with us. I want to now just go and play and try them all out, but I probably have
hope
other
so.
things I have to do. But I hope that all of you found at least one of these Plix programs that excites you and you can't wait to try it out with your patrons. If you need any help with anything or some ideas on how to make one of these work, Patty and Diane are going to be able to give you some great ideas. Jennifer, I'm sure, is also
Yes,
available.
I'll put up to my final screen. Is it up with my
Yes,
contact information?
with their contact information.
Okay.
And I'll make sure that that's also in the archive when I send that out. So I mean, of course, you're always free to contact one of us, but if you want to contact Jennifer directly here, we'll send out her email address as well. Are there any other questions for Jennifer before we call it a day? Lots of thank yous in the comments, Jennifer.
Thank you all for hanging out with me for the last hour, because it was fun.
Mm.
I like to play, and I hope I'll see some of you at one of our Macon meets at KLA, because I'm really excited to try some of these and let you guys explore them. I think it's a good way for you to do it at no cost to you, to try it out and see if it's something you want to do.
And KLA this year is in Wichita. It's October 26th through the 28th, and it's in Wichita. And you can use CE money to attend. And we also have a couple of, I think we have 3 conference grants left this year, and it would pay up to $1,000 of costs for KLA. Okay. I am going to stop recording. Thank you.